Hey, soul survivors, we're going to talk about the prevalence of narcissism. You'll see anything from 1% to 5%. Some people think 20, 25% of the population could be, not that they are, but could be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, where you meet at least 5 out of 9 criteria based on the DSM-5. But I'm going to give you an analogy that can kind of help you understand, like, how many people could be narcissistic. So I've taught criminal law. My degree is in criminal justice. I am a teacher, but this is my thought process to kind of share with you guys. So as of 2021, there's 0.7 to 0.8% of the total population in the United States is incarcerated. So they are incarcerated. And that's about 1% of the American population at any one time. So if we take the statistics where narcissism or even sociopaths, psychopaths, that's like 1% of the population too, that how prevalent is it? So the reason I am bringing up the incarcerated, I'm not saying they are narcissistic. A lot of narcissists will have a higher impulsivity, um, uh, thinking they're above the law. So they could be higher within the justice system. But so African Americans, while they make up about 13% of the US population, they have historically accounted for a significantly higher percentage of the incarcerated population. So the rate for African Americans is much higher than for other racial groups. And the only reason I bring this up is not to say that African Americans are more narcissistic. The only reason I bring it up is because sometimes people, based on their socioeconomic status, the people that they choose to hang out with, your perception on what I'm going to bring up will be on your experiences based on your group. So if you're outside of that group, you don't hang out with African Americans, your experience might be different in the perception, or vice versa, any way around. Hispanics, they constitute about 8% of the US population, and they have a higher disproportionate representation. And white Americans make up about 60 to 61%, and they have a lower rate of incarceration. So depending on who you hang out with, it's going to change your perception on what I'm going to ask you to do. So 13% African American, it's about 35 to 40% more that are incarcerated. Hispanics, 18%, typically around 20-25% of those incarcerated. And whites, like I said, 60-61%, but they have about 30 to 35% of the makeup of those incarcerated. So like I said, take that information to know who you're around. But if you want to know how many narcissists are out there, think about 1%. Even if we went with that 1%, which is probably 20-25%, but we're going to take that 1%. And how many people do you know, even if it's, what is it, the 6 stages of Kevin Bacon, how many people do you know that are incarcerated or have been incarcerated this year? Now you take over time all the people that have been put into the system, but if you think about the 1%, if you know somebody, that kind of gives you an idea of the amount that is out there. And if you think about all the people that get away with the different crimes, think about the people you know, that whether they are drunk drivers or, you know, at the self-checkout, they took a case of beer without checking it out or whatever it would be, to what amount of people have committed crimes that go unseen. So just like the narcissist, a lot of it either goes unseen in a sense of diagnosis, because they don't go into a therapist a lot of times, or they move on. So they start kind of like a whole new life. So they go kind of incognito. But if you think about how many people you know that have done something a little shady here and there, what percent would that be? And it is narcissistic to do those kind of things, but I just thought, you know, sometimes we feel like we're the only person that was targeted. Like nobody understands what I went through. And it's hard to understand when somebody hasn't gone through narcissistic abuse, but it lets you know that you're not alone and how prevalent it is. So I hope that analogy kind of makes some sense of how big narcissism could be. Because like I said, people who do certain criminal activities could have a mental illness, whether it's a psychopath, sociopath, schizoid, all these kind of things, that each of these mental illnesses has their own certain percentage as well. Certain mental illnesses you can work through, certain ones you can't. So prepare yourself that you understand what we're looking at with society. And that's why we need those boundaries. Or we also have to look out for red flags. I just started talking with someone. They told me that, you know, they went through a rehab for alcohol. That right there is already a red flag, kind of. But, you know, give people some grace, right? They're trying, they're working on themselves. But then he's drinking. You can hear he's drinking a beer, and he even admitted to it while we were on the phone. So it's like, you're not willing to change. There was another guy too who was really upset that he's like, you know, women don't want to date me because I smoke. All I do is smoke. And I believe he meant cigarettes, but he was really upset that he can't get a date because women keep turning him down because he smokes. So he can either, that's fine, he can do what he wants to do, but if that's a boundary for somebody, you know, if he's not willing to change, he's going to miss out. And there are times, you know, if we're, you know, doing something healthy, like she doesn't like that I work out, you might have to prioritize your health. But he's upset, but not willing to make the changes. So in a healthy relationship, it usually gets into alignment. They also have statistics on if one partner smokes and the other doesn't, it raises the divorce rate so high. I believe it's like 90% or something, to where people start feeling left out because you're like, oh, I'll be right back. I'm going to go have a cigarette. Or you start talking and neglecting that person, that it gets that snowball rolling. So I hope that helps to understand how vast narcissism could be. If you think how vast the criminal justice system would be. And then people, this is just at one time because people do process out of the system. There's also recidivism, that, you know, somebody who is narcissistic, they go through that calm period and then it's going to come back out. Depends on people's personalities, on their patterns of behavior. Pay attention to patterns of behavior. So if you are with somebody who shows narcissistic traits, are they willing to work on themselves and hold themselves accountable? And do you hold them accountable? Because if we keep allowing them to do this, it's like a repeated pattern. It's just going to keep happening. So protect yourselves. One-on-ones are available. Topic requests are welcome. And I hope that gave you a little insight of how much could be unseen or undocumented. Like there's undocumented criminals because they didn't get caught. It's kind of like undocumented narcissists. Protect yourself.